Hadza hunter in northern Tanzania wakes before dawn, walks 7 miles across dry savanna, digs tubers out of sunbaked ground with a sharpened stick, climbs a baobab tree to smoke wild bees out of a hollow, and by nightfall, he has burned about the same number of calories you did sitting in a chair. Same fuel, different body. He is lean, so is nearly every adult in his camp, and none of them are hungry for it. They eat until they are full. They have been doing it that way, in that place, since long before anyone planted a seed. So the story you were handed about your own body is wrong. Not slightly off. Wrong at the root. By the end of this, you will know what actually kept human bodies lean for roughly 300,000 years, and why it stopped working in about 70. It has almost nothing to do with willpower, and less than you think to do with exercise. 2 things to hold on to before that. One is a small lump of limestone, carved 29,000 years ago, that looks like it demolishes this entire argument. The other is a hospital ward in Maryland, where 20 people ate whatever they wanted for 4 weeks, and accidentally proved the whole thing. Both come back. Neither one is what you expect. Start with the calories, because that is where almost everyone goes wrong. In 2012, an evolutionary anthropologist named Herman Pontzer went to Tanzania with a technique called Doubly labeled water. You drink water tagged with harmless isotopes, and researchers track how fast your body flushes them out. It is the closest science gets to a fuel gauge on a living human. No guessing, no food diaries, no self-reporting. Just the actual number of calories a body burns in a day. Pontzer measured 30 Hadza men and women. Then he compared them with adults in Europe and the United States. He expected a gap. Everyone expected a gap. The Hadza move constantly. David Reich-Len and his colleagues later measured them clocking well over 2 hours a day of moderate to vigorous activity, roughly 10 times what the average Western adult manages. The gap was not there. Once you account for body size, and the Hadza are small, a Hadza forager burns about the same daily energy as an office worker in New Jersey. 2 hours of digging and hauling and walking, and the meter reads the same. That result has been argued over for a decade, and it has held. The body appears to run on a budget. Push activity up, and it quietly trims spending somewhere you cannot see. Inflammation, stress hormones, background repair. The total stays remarkably flat, which leaves a hole in the middle of the question. If your ancestors did not burn more, why were they not fat? Look at what the hunter actually eats. Tuber is called Ekwa. It grows a foot down in ground, packed hard as pavement, and getting one out takes several minutes of prying with a stick. It comes up woody, fibrous, dusty. You roast it in the coals for a few minutes, then you chew, and you chew, and you chew. The starch comes out slowly, in traces, and what stays behind is a wad of tough plant fiber your teeth cannot break down, so you spit it out. Ball of chewed pulp lands in the dirt beside the fire, and half the food you just worked to dig is sitting in it, uneaten, because your jaw simply gave up first. That is dinner, not a metaphor. That is the physical act of feeding a human body for most of human history. The researchers who have studied Hadza foraging estimate they take in somewhere north of 100 grams of fiber on a typical day. The average American manages about 16. Justin Sonnenberg's lab at Stanford, working with Samuel Smith's, sequenced Hadza gut bacteria across seasons and found a microbial community that swings and reshuffles as the wet season turns dry, carrying diversity that has essentially vanished from industrialized guts. Honey is in there too. Berries, baobab pods, marrow cracked out of bone. Nobody is counting anything. Nobody is refusing anything. The same picture shows up wherever anthropologists have gone looking. Richard Lee lived with the Kung of the Kalahari in the early 1960s and weighed their food. About 2,100 calories a day, gathered in something like 2 or 3 hours of work. Not deprivation, not abundance either. Just enough, reliably, without effort that broke them. Staffan Lindeberg spent years on Kitava, a small island off Papua New Guinea, where people still lived on yams, taro, coconut, and fish. He examined more than 1,000 adults. He found no overweight. He also found leptin levels, the hormone fat tissue uses to report itself to your brain, sitting near the floor of what instruments could read. By now you can probably see where this is heading, and you are most of the way there. Their food fought back. That is the whole thing. Every calorie your ancestors ate had to be dug, cracked, climbed for, chewed past the point of patience and swallowed against real physical resistance. Not the calories going out, the calories coming in. The gate on the way in was narrow, and it was guarded by fiber and bone and time. Modern food did not add anything to your body. It removed the guard. Which brings us to Maryland. In 2019, Kevin Hall ran a study at the National Institutes of Health that should be more famous than it is. 20 adults moved into a metabolic ward where every gram they ate could be measured. They spent 2 weeks on an ultra-processed diet and 2 weeks on an unprocessed one, in random order. Here is the part that matters. The 2 diets were matched, same calories offered. Same sugar, same fat, same sodium, same fiber, same protein and carbohydrate ratios. On paper, on a nutrition label, they were twins. The only real difference was how much a factory had already done to the food before it reached the plate. Subjects could eat as much as they wanted, or as little. On the ultra-processed weeks, they ate about 500 extra calories a day. Every day. They gained roughly 2 pounds in 14 days, then lost roughly 2 pounds on the other diet. Ask them, and they said they were not hungrier. They did not rate the food as tastier. They just ate faster. The stuff was soft, dense, warm, and it went down without asking anything of them. And by the time the signal arrived saying stop, they were already 500 calories past the line. That is the surprising reason, and it is nothing anyone wants it to be. Your ancestors were not lean because they moved. They were lean because their food was hard to eat. Michael Gerven and Hillard Kaplan have watched this run in real time among the Chimane of Bolivia. In 2017, their team scanned 705 Chimane adults and reported the lowest rates of coronary artery disease ever measured in any population. Then roads reached the villages. Sugar, oil, and flour came up the river. Body weight in those communities has been climbing since, in people whose genes have not changed at all. Now the limestone. 1908, workers building a railway near Willendorf of Austria turned up a 4-inch carving of a woman, about 29,000 years old. She is obese, heavy breasts, thick thighs, a full belly rendered with obvious care by someone who had seen one. She is not alone. Dozens of Ice Age figurines like her have come out of the ground across Europe. So Paleolithic people did get fat, right? Almost certainly not, or not many. 2020, Richard Johnson and colleagues published an argument in the journal Obesity that these figures cluster around the coldest, most desperate stretches of the last glacial period, and that they may be images of a wished-for state rather than a common one. Something you carve precisely because you have almost never seen it. Other researchers find that unconvincing, and the honest answer is that nobody can read the mind of a person who died before the last ice sheets melted. But the shape of the evidence is hard to miss. The fattest human bodies surviving from the Ice Age were carved by hand, not buried, whatever those women meant to the people who made them. Being that size was rare enough to be worth 20 hours of work with a flint blade. Fat used to be an achievement. That is how far away you are from the world your body still thinks it lives in, and your body has not been told. Every system in you, the hunger signals, the fat storage, the reward loop that lights up for sweetening and grease, was tuned across 300,000 years for a world where food resisted you at every step. Then in a single lifetime the resistance disappeared, and nothing inside you was updated. Which of those foods on your shelf would you actually be willing to dig for? The Hadza hunter climbed a tree, took stings on his hands, chewed a wad of fiber, and spat most of it into the dirt, and burned the same calories you did sitting still. The difference was never in the burning. It was in everything standing between him and the food, and in how quietly and how recently all of it was cleared away. If the world you came from feels a little closer now, that's exactly the point. Subscribe, and every week we'll uncover another piece of who you used to be.